Hello, friend. Lots of people die, maybe even everyone. It's a stark contrast, isn't it? Life and death. About 400 million years ago, under immense pressure and heat, metamorphosis of mud and ash sediment created this Welsh slate. It feels like almost as long ago that we started this project to make a gravestone for Sam's dad, who passed in 2020. It's been an open loop, taking up space in my mind and in the workshop, and this video is going to be about finishing. Finishing this project, finishing projects in general, finishing lives and making projects for the end of a life. Not the right tool for the job. Maybe you've got your own projects that just need to end, or maybe you think open loops are the way forwards and nothing's ever really finished, till the day you die perhaps, and even then, stuff persists. I'll admit I had more than a few conversations with Sam's dad during this project, mostly imagining him chuckling at the ridiculousness of what I was doing, or calling me a wally when things went wrong. Okay. Amazing how we can animate the dead in our minds like that. A lot of that has to do with time scale though. Things do just return to dust, I guess. Let me ask you this. Can you recall a single deed or action of your great-great-great-grandparents? From the slate's perspective, that's an inconceivably short period of time as well. The whole history of humanity is a comparative blip to its 400 million year solid state existence. Now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if the association of stone memorials and death is a deliberate move to get us thinking about our cosmic insignificance. It certainly got me thinking about the shortness of life anyway. I'm a bit nervous about bodging this up while Sam's away. Yes, okay. Okay. It's a bit shoddy on the back side compared to the front now, so we'll have to give it a good sand down. Okay. Put it back. Gently. Have you ever noticed when you're doing a project and you're just in it, there's ups and downs, time flies by, you're making a million little experiments, making mistakes, moves and counter moves. Well, that is way more all over the place than I'd hoped. We'll just have to zero in each either letter or word. So now I'm having a moment of, oh shit, is this really going to work? 1,000 tweaks to your end goals as your hopes and expectations smash up against reality. Cutting that path between what is and what you want things to be like. Ooh, it's the mundane grind at its best. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? You get into that highly prized flow state and time just flies by. Have a grueling shit time and suddenly you feel immortal, like time is on pause just for you. Maybe the shortness of life really becomes a thing when you're consumed by a purpose. I mean, I know it's normal to say life's too short, especially around death, but what does that get us really? Is it the warning? Is it the big heavy stick that's there to make sure we cherish what brief life we do have? That seems to be it for the Stoic philosopher Seneca anyway. Don't waste your time on trivial purposes because life is short. Avoid distractions, cultivate wisdom, cherish friends, yada yada yada. It's almost cliche, we've all heard it, but it's still just eminently wonderful advice. I still haven't fully internalised it, and I need it as ammunition in my battle against the lizard brain. What do you make of it? Between my fear of bureaucracy and actual bureaucracy, It was a good year or so before we got to fit this gravestone. In the UK, the National Association of Memorial Masons, or NAM, have this Code of Working Practice. It's a super useful 60-page document full of practical guidelines and standards. The councils who control the local cemeteries, some of them sign up to it, some of them don't, some subscribe to certain bits, and some only really care if you're a paid up member of the association. There's plenty of arse-covery going on. The document goes into a lot of different doweling methods and other types of install that we're not so interested in. From the beginning, we only really wanted the timeless, classic, simple slate in the ground method. And this is known as a monolithic style install, as in a single great stone. And there's only a few pages dedicated to this. The key takeaways are they recommend you use some kind of concrete saddle, though that's not a requirement, and that you bury an extra third of the height above ground. Ultimately, we're trying to avoid this kind of thing. We had to be reasonably well prepared because the cemetery is in a different country to where we live, so it's quite a journey to get there. First steps to lay out, measure the distance between the existing gravestones, so you get it right in the middle, or in our case there was going to be a space for another grave on the left-hand side of this one. So yeah, we want to mark out as perfectly close to in line as we can before we start digging. We want a neat rectangle that's slightly larger than the size of the concrete saddle. The wooden board there's just a kind of working board that we optimistically thought we'd be using just to prevent collapsing of the sides, but the ground was so hard. This was after a period of a very dry month.
It's quite warm.
It's lucky we did bring the iron bar to help break up the ground. This really makes us look terrible at digging, but trust me, I grew up on a farm digging things, and this was really quite a challenge. As we got through the top foot or so, it did start getting softer. That juicy clayishness. It's still really quite solid. After all the back and forthing and correspondence and bureaucracy and things, it was quite satisfying somehow to have this ridiculously sweaty, hard dig at the end of it. It was just right. Look at that juicy load. Digging away. Because we were overkilling the requirements for this, we went about ½ a metre down and we'd have about 85 centimetres of the stone visible above ground. The concrete saddle's job is to lower the centre of gravity and to spread the load, but whether or not you choose to use one, it's a very good idea to compact the base as best you can. The longer it's been since the ground's been disturbed from grave digging, and the more compacted it is, the more chance the grave will not go wonky. I guess like a million other woodworking or building tasks, this is a classic case of patience being the whole skill in a way, not getting frustrated, coming back, being willing to put in the time and not take shortcuts. There it is. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But, you know, life is short. And you have to know that ultimately the gravestone will go wonky. It's just a question of what kind of time scale. Luckily we brought this scrap of carpet with us. We thought it was a bit too big at the time, but actually the ground was so hard, any movements on the surface would have scratched it. The trick here is getting the stone in without smashing anything. It's such a heavy beast, and it's landing on quite an uncompromising concrete solid object. You can see how we can kind of control the descent as we pivot it down with that robust timber Sam's holding here. Actually worked really well, didn't have to take the colossal weight of the stone at any point. It just sort of pivot and slides in, and then just some wiggle jigglies to get the stone sitting nicely in the saddle. As you wedge the headstone into the saddle, it will no doubt need levelling back and forth a reasonable amount and sort of evenly knock wedges into one side and then the other side. What was nice is even before we started putting the earth back in, the stone actually felt really quite solid and secure once it was wedged into the saddle. The backfill, as you might imagine, is a question of filling it up an inch, compacting, filling up an inch, compacting, doing both sides quite evenly, checking level, make sure it's all staying perfectly square. Once it was up to the top, this was just absolutely rock solid, and I'm quite confident it's not going anywhere anytime soon. One thing I really should have thought of but didn't was that the saddle and the stone displace quite a lot of material even if you compact it really well. We ended up putting this back on the grave to kind of create a little mound, having nothing else to do with it. Sam planted a little rosemary bush in the middle of that, surrounded by some of the rocks we dug up, and we were done. Bit of an unusual video this. I hope it makes someone's experience of living with death a little bit sweeter. Peace and love. See you next time.